Chapter 111, Two Types of Coordination. Lu Hao hadn't slept yesterday night. He hadn't slept in the morning and was then called over by the boss at noon. He was busy the entire afternoon and hadn't slept. Only after dinner was he able to sleep for a bit, but he kept Yi Chu in his mind the entire time. As a result, when it was almost midnight, he struggled up out of bed and went online. In the end, once he got on, he was told that there was no space for him in the party. Lu Hao wanted to eat Yi Chu raw, but was helpless and could only foolishly stare at his monitor. As for Yi Chu and the others, they tried to set a new dungeon record. Although there was no one to pay him, breaking the record meant that there would still be quite a few rewards. Players could begin running Boneyard from level 23. Level 25 players had already ran it several times already. If they wanted to set a new record, then naturally they had to pay attention to their coordination. Outside of the dungeon, Yi Chu explained to them the strategy. After they heard it, they immediately entered the dungeon. F***CK. Just as they entered, Seven Fields yelled. His yell was filled with both hate and love. This was because a system announcement had popped up: Vampire Knight Logue has resurrected. Adventures, please be careful. Hidden boss. Meeting a hidden boss was something everyone looked forward to. But a hidden boss appearing meant that setting a new dungeon record was impossible. This went against their original intentions, which was why Seven Fields yelled a F***CK with both love and hate. Today's luck isn't bad, Yi Chu was happy. Once he hit level 23, of course he wouldn't miss the opportunity to run Boneyard. But so far up until now, he hadn't yet met a hidden boss. Every dungeon usually had several different hidden bosses. Their chances of appearing were all different. Vampire Knight Logue was one of Boneyard's rarest boss. Yet they had actually met it today. Just think of this round as a way to break in, Yi Chu said this and then directed Lord Grimm to rush forward and kill monsters. Tang Ru immediately let Soft Mist follow up too. This girl still liked to compete with Yi Chu. Whatever Yi Chu did, she always wanted to try if she could do it or not. Yesterday night at Frost Forest, Yi Chu pulled 16 goblins, which was another hit to her. But the more Tang Ru was hit, the more terrible she became. But right when Soft Mist moved, Cleansing Mist had already fired a gunshot. The two monsters, which Lord Grimm was rushing towards, were alarmed and were swaying over to them. She had been together with Cleansing Mist for a few days already. To Tang Ru, her performance was always ahead of Tang Ru by a bit. For example, when Yi Chu's Lord Grimm rushed forward to pull monsters, Tang Ru immediately went to follow up. However, Cleansing Mist's movements were just slightly faster. Is this person's hand faster than mine too? Tang Ru thought like this, but never went to ask her. What she didn't know was that Su Mucheng didn't have a faster hand speed, but rather more knowledge. Just through hand speed, she was faster than Su Mucheng. And under Yi Chu's coaching, the coordination between her left and right hands improved rapidly. But besides that, in other aspects, she was still far from Su Mucheng. This sister also didn't have it easy. She was always comparing herself to people like Yi Chu, those types of god-level characters, or people like Su Mucheng, those types of good pro-level characters. This always made her feel somewhat incapable, which made her work even harder. In the game, that meant that Soft Mist had to be even more forward and even more ferocious than Lord Grimm. This sort of tyrannical display made Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon feel somewhat bewildered. The way this girl fought gave them the feeling that they couldn't intervene. They could only fight alongside Lord Grimm and help Brother Expert. But the damage by Lord Grimm's silver weapon was much greater than Soft Mist's weapon. In addition, Cleansing Mist was also helping Lord Grimm clear monsters. The monsters on this side fell quickly. When Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon went over to support him, they felt as if they couldn't really help, making them feel as if they were useless. The two players' cheeks streamed with tears. Did they really even need them? Yi Chu saw the situation and understood them well. On his side, he and Su Mucheng were already enough. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon should have been Tang Ru's helpers. But Tang Ru was too strong-headed and always pursued the limits. In addition, the gap between her and Seven Fields, Sleeping Moon was quite large, so the two sides were unable to coordinate together. Let's switch. You go help her, Yi Shu said to Su Mucheng. This sister's really fierce, Su Mucheng said while letting her cleansing mist help Soft Mist. Yi Shu naturally lowered his tempo, which made Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon suddenly feel much more comfortable fighting the monsters. These two skill levels weren't enough to understand all these high-level things. They just thought that because Cleansing Mist had went over to the other side, she left them some space to fight. Tang Ru controlled Soft Mist to attack monsters, while occasionally paying attention to Yi Shu's situation. Seven Fields and the Sleeping Moon hastily ran over to the other side, while Cleansing Mist went over to help her. She didn't know the reason why and fought as she was before. But at this moment, she saw that Yi Shu's Lord Grimm was clearly moving slower and had slowed down his tempo. She didn't know why either. Tang Ru fought together with her, but gradually discovered that her situation had also changed. In the beginning, she was the one who took initiative, while Cleansing Mist was there for assistance. But unknowingly, she discovered that the situation had reversed. Cleansing Mist was the one who took initiative, while she was there for assistance. This sort of initiator and helper relationship wasn't only seen on the monster's aggro, but was also on the tempo and direction. Unknowingly, Tang Ru found that her tempo had already been stolen by Cleansing Mist. She was now following Cleansing Mist's lead. This type of tempo issue, how could a noob like Tang Ru understand it? She simply didn't like that sort of feeling, that's all. Annoyed, she deliberately tried to sabotage the situation, and caused the two players to be in danger several times. Even Yi Shu's Lord Grimm had to rush up and help them occasionally. Tang Ru was astonished. She had no idea why everything had happened like so. While she was at a loss, she heard Cleansing Mist say on the side, "Look how he's fighting on that side." Tang Ru obviously knew who this he was pointing to. But seeing Yi Shu fight, she couldn't understand what was so amazing. He was so slow. She herself could just casually do that. If you switched with him, could you coordinate well with Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon? Su Mucheng said. Coordinate? Tang Ru stared blankly. There are two types of coordination. One type is to adjust to the other members and coordinate like that. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon do this type. This type is relatively simple. As for the other type, that's to drive the other members to coordinate with you. That's the type he's doing, Su Mucheng said. After Tang Ru stared blankly, she suddenly said, "Then just a moment ago, you were driving me to coordinate with you?" Me? I was adjusting to you. But I don't know how it slowly became you following me, Su Mucheng said. Tang Ru scratched her head. This idea seemed very abstruse. But honestly speaking, she didn't really like the word coordination. She preferred to take charge herself, beating all the enemies in battle by herself. Boss, at this moment, Seven Fields cried out in fear. Everyone's camera angle switched to the front and saw an average-sized knight wearing pitch-black armor, which who knew when, had stood at the mouth of the road. His face was even paler and his blood-red eyes were extremely bewitching. In his right hand, he held a long, narrow, scarlet lightsaber. In his left hand, he held a shield with a bat symbol on it. He silently stood there without saying a word. The five players quickly cleared the small monsters and then gazed at the boneyard's rarest hidden boss, Vampire Knight Logue. Because they hadn't yet entered its aggro range, the Vampire Knight Logue didn't move. He stood alone in the middle of the road. From the fork in the road, it was possible to go around without alarming him. A lot of hidden bosses were like this. Players could choose to not fight it. It was just that when meeting a rare hidden boss, the majority of players would still try it. In fact, to inexperienced normal players, they would be unable to take down a hidden boss 90% of the time. But to Yi Shu and them, of course they weren't concerned about whether they could take it down or not. Yi Shu looked at the Vampire Knight Logue's long and narrow lightsaber. He suddenly said, "Little Moon Moon, did you learn the lightsaber mastery?" "No, I learned the Ta Chi mastery." After Sleeping Moon finished saying this, he suddenly thought of something and immediately stomped, "Who the F***ck is Little Moon Moon?" "Then the vampiric lightsaber is mine then," Yi Shu said. Ah, Sleeping Moon stared blankly. He also knew of the vampiric lightsaber. It was a level 25 orange weapon. Although lightsabers could only be used by blade masters, since Sleeping Moon took the optional route of having Ta Chi mastery, then he would be a blade master that prioritized Ta Chis. Sword Mastery was a passive skill that Blade Masters could learn after level 20. Mastery could be split into 5 types, which was naturally the 5 types of swords: Great Sword, Short Sword, Broadsword, Tachi, and Lightsaber. Although a player could choose more than one mastery to learn, normal Blade Masters would only choose one and stick with it because skill points were precious. With every level into a sword mastery, the attack of the sword type chosen would be increased by 2%. At level 10, there would be a 20% increase, extremely significant. Apart from this, it also had additional effects with some skills. Different sword types would have additional effects with different skills. It all depended on which mastery a player chose. Since Sleeping Moon had learned the Tachi mastery, he would naturally choose to use the Tachi as a weapon. However, this didn't mean that he could not use a lightsaber. Now that he heard the great phrase orange weapon, he was still itching for it in his heart. Begin killing it, Yishu yelled. Cleansing Mist immediately raised her weapon and sent an anti-tank missile over. Soft Mist also lifted her battle lance and rushed forward. Wait a moment, Yishu hastily shouted. But Tang Ru continued to forge ahead. She arrived practically at the same time as Cleansing Mist's anti-tank missile. In the end, he saw the Vampire Knight use his right hand to whip his cloak over in front of his body. With a screech, when his cloak opened, the knight had disappeared. Countless small bats flew out and swiftly headed towards them. The 3 anti-tank missiles hit nothing and the small bats pounced onto Soft Mist, biting her. These small bats, with their tiny eyes radiating red, covered Tang Ru's screen. Their tiny fangs outside of their mouth seemed to drip saliva, extremely nauseating. The small bats engulfed her without toppling Soft Mist. However, her life directly plummeted a large portion. Tang Ru hastily drank a potion. Those small bats that had engulfed her had already gathered together once again behind her, and the Vampire Knight swirled his cloak and appeared again. The scarlet vampiric lightsaber immediately stabbed towards her body like a viper. Chapter 112, Perfect Coordination. Careful, 7 Fields and Sleeping Moon, 2 melee-type classes, felt that they couldn't save her. They could only remind her, hoping that there would be some reaction to it. But next to the 2 players, a cannon shot and a gunshot rang out. Cleansing Mist and Lord Grimm both fired. The gunshot was quicker, while the cannon shot was slower. However, in the end, both shots accurately hit the Vampire Knight's wrist, which was about to stab down. One after another, the 2 shots hit, making him stab askew. Tang Ru's reaction speed and control were extremely quick. This crooked blow won enough time for her. She jumped forward and in an instant, whirled 180 degrees in mid-air at the same time. Sweeping in front of her body with her lance, she then used a dragon tooth to stab forward. Dong! The Vampire Knight's agility was also quick. He raised his shield and blocked the dragon tooth. He then chased after Soft Mist. Tang Ru wasn't careless. Before Soft Mist touched the ground, she slashed downwards. The Vampire Knight raised his shield again to block it. Soft Mist landed just in time to meet with the Vampire Knight, which had rushed forward. Tang Ru's hands moved swiftly. Soft Mist sent out a falling flower palm. The Vampire Knight still had his shield high up pointing towards the sky. With this palm, he was sent flying backwards. Yishu had already come over to help her. Lord Grimm rushed forward. A sky strike leapt up, directly knocking the Vampire Knight, which Soft Mist had blown over, into the air. Su Mucheng's Cleansing Mist raised her cannon and sent an anti-tank missile over. 3 anti-tank missiles hit the Vampire Knight. In the middle of the artillery barrage, the Vampire Knight looked as if it were about to fly away. However, Lord Grimm had already leapt up. His battle lance stabbed forward and executed a circle swing, bringing the Vampire Knight back. The battle lance threw downwards and the Vampire Knight almost smashed a hole into the ground. Cleansing Mist's cannon had already gathered together an energy ball. Right when the Vampire Knight crashed to the ground, the energy ball flew out and exploded onto the Vampire Knight's face. This was a launcher's level 25 skill cannonball, which shot out an energy ball at a target. After storing power, the energy ball would have increased damage and range. When it exploded, the shockwave would be even greater too. These few fluid moves and coordination were completed in an instant. 7 Fields and Sleeping Moon were both watching dumbstruck. After the cannonball exploded, Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist immediately leapt backwards. The Vampire Knight's cloak whirled around him like a sword, but only hit air. While taking back his cloak, the Vampire Knight got up. He turned around and still rushed towards Soft Mist's direction. Tang Ru stared blankly. Although she was a new player, she already had a basic understanding of how aggro worked. Her previous dragon tooth hit the shield. Afterwards, she sent out a falling flower palm. In theory, it shouldn't have pulled more aggro than Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist. Could it be because she had been bitten by those small bats? Tang Ru's guess wasn't wrong. The reason the Vampire Knight was charging at her was because she had been bitten by those small bats. Dodge first. If he hits you, then his health will recover, Yishu promptly warned Tang Ru. This was the Vampire Knight's special skill. Targets that had been bitten by his incarnated bats would become healing fodder. When the fodder was hit again by him, he would heal. The amount of health gain didn't depend on the amount of damage. If it was like that, then to the boss, the health recovered would be completely insignificant. The amount of health the boss had was on another level compared to the amount of health players had. So the health gain depended on the percentage of damage done. In other words, if his attack did 5% of Soft Mist's health, then he would recover 5% of his health. In this way, players were in a huge disadvantage. Tang Ru had quite a lot of confidence in her skill, but she wasn't familiar with this boss. She didn't know whether or not there might be a bizarre, impossible to defend against move that would come out. In order to avoid being surprise attacked and wasting everyone's efforts, Tang Ru could only reluctantly have Soft Mist run to the side to hide from the Vampire Knight and wait for Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist to rescue her. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon were extremely embarrassed. They had absolutely no idea on how they should get involved in the battle. Brother Expert was busy attacking the boss and hadn't given them any instructions. When they saw the Vampire Knight locked onto Soft Mist, the two finally found an opportunity to appear and hastily rushed forward to intercept. The Vampire Knight wasn't so stupid that he would only chase after his target and ignore other attacks from other players. Sleeping Moon slashed and the Vampire Knight raised its shield to block it. Seven Fields rushed up and punched. The Vampire Knight no longer had a shield to use and simply used its sword to chop down towards Seven Fields. Whoa, how could Seven Fields dare to fight recklessly against the boss? He could only dodge the attack. Apart from the sword and shield, the Vampire Knight also had a third weapon, his cloak. Now that he was being attacked by two people, he whirled his cloak in a circle, cutting towards them like a sharp knife. Seven Fields flipped back to dodge it. But it hit Sleeping Moon, cutting a string of blood. Sleeping Moon's life plummeted by 1/4. Ashen-faced, Sleeping Moon promptly ran back. Seven Fields was still rolling back. The attack made by the Vampire Knight's cloak was a 360 degrees attack. After whirling around a full circle, the cloak fell on a spot and was just about to nick Seven Fields, who was on the ground. But suddenly, a battle lance appeared and stabbed at the Vampire Knight. Tang Ru's Soft Mist had mounted a sneak attack with a circle swing, knocking down the Vampire Knight onto the ground. Sleeping Moon and Seven Fields wanted to be the heroes saving the princess, but in the end, they became the princesses saved by the hero. Seven Fields frantically flipped up. He didn't have the time to express his thanks and continue to be like a hero. He blocked Soft Mist behind him and said, "You escape first." "All of you escape," Yishu yelled. The three were startled. In the end, none of them reacted in time. The Vampire Knight once again whirled his cloak around his body and then filled the sky with small bats. Except this time, 3 players were in their range. The bats scattered and attacked the 3 players. Although the damage dealt to each of them wasn't as high as when it was only Soft Mist, no one knew exactly who would become the next fodder for the Vampire Knight. Cleansing Mist's cannon swung and machine gun sounds repeatedly rang out. This was the launcher skill, Gatling gun. While using it, she also rattled the gun, making what was originally a line of bullets into a hail of scattered bullets. The small bats had tiny bodies and were extremely quick. However, they were densely crowded together, so these bullets hit quite a few of them. The damage dealt would ultimately be counted as damage done to the Vampire Knight. As for those 3 players, they had no way of defending against these bat attacks. However, after these bad attacks, a new target would be selected as healing fodder, so it was less likely that attacks done to soft mist would have lifesteal. These bad attacks were done quickly and in an instant, they gathered back into a cloak. Yishu fixed his attention on the moment the Vampire Knight took form again. The moment the Vampire Knight made the slightest of movements, he immediately determined where the Vampire Knight would head to next. "Little Moon Moon," Yishu hastily yelled. Just as expected, this time, Sleeping Moon became the Vampire Knight's fodder and the Vampire Knight charged at him. Sleeping Moon was so scared, he ran away in a hurry. But his movements weren't enough in front of the Vampire Knight. After a few steps, he was about to be closed in on and chopped up. In his imminent peril, a lance diagonally stabbed at the Vampire Knight, knocking him up into the air. A falling flower palm followed and the Vampire Knight was blown away. It was Soft Mist. She was closer to Sleeping Moon than Lord Grim, so she arrived quicker. Because she had been the fodder previously, she didn't dare face the Vampire Knight. She had been suppressed. Now that Sleeping Moon was the fodder, if the Vampire Knight wasn't going to chase her, then she was going to chase him. "Hurry up and run a bit farther away," Tang Ru said to Sleeping Moon. This made Sleeping Moon feel very shameful. But what could he do? Generally speaking, male players were a bit better than female players. As a result, male players tended to show their strength in front of female players. But in this party, the two female players were both monsters. He didn't know how much more skilled they were than he was. And in the end, he was the one to be looked after by them. Sleeping Moon was sad, very sad. At this moment, Yishu's Lord Grim finally arrived. Cleansing Mist followed after. After the moment of confusion, the three experts could finally fight together. Yishu quickly arranged a formation. Their ability to carry it out didn't need to be said. It didn't matter if the trapped Vampire Knight raised his shield, brandished his sword, or whirled his cloak, nothing worked. Sleeping Moon and Seven Fields were reduced to spectators. But they knew that it wasn't because Brother Expert wasn't giving them any opportunities, it was because they had no way of matching their coordination. Fast, it was way too fast. In the middle of their besiegement, Lord Grim suddenly inappropriately used a falling flower palm, blowing away the Vampire Knight out of their encirclement. "Oh no," Seven Fields yelled out sorrowfully. This was the first time he had seen Brother Expert make a mistake. But when the falling flower palm flew out, Cleansing Mist followed up with an anti-tank missile at the same time. The three anti-tank missiles exploded onto the Vampire Knight one after another. The shock wave from the explosions added onto the falling flower palm's power sent the Vampire Knight flying away like an arrow. The Vampire Knight hadn't yet fallen to the ground, when the Vampire Knight suddenly screeched and turned into a swarm of bats. Except this time, the bats had no one to attack. They randomly flew around and then transformed back into a single body. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon were once again dumbstruck. It looked like the previous falling flower palm wasn't a mistake at all. With Cleansing Mist's anti-tank missiles added on, the palm was a move that was quickly done after seeing that the Vampire Knight was about to whirl his cloak. In the instant that the Vampire Knight began whirling his cloak, the two players were actually able to knock the bats far away enough to be outside of their attack range. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon weren't Tang Ru. They had known about the Vampire Knight's great name as well as the troublesome bat attack. To defend against this attack, only a Chi Master's Nen Guard would work. Besides this, the only other method was to jump out of the bat swarm's attack range when the bats appeared. But because this had to be done quickly and the attack range wasn't small, whether or not one could run away was a big problem. But today, Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon witnessed the legendary solution: knock the Vampire Knight far away enough so that they wouldn't be in the bat swarm's attack range. To do this, besides accurate judgment and quick movements, the most important part was perfect coordination. Chapter 113, Casually Dungeoning. This time, the Vampire Knight didn't have a set fodder. However, the previous fodder didn't expire. Fortunately, after this cycle, the effects had somewhat decreased. But it didn't matter if the effects decreased. With the boss's percent lifesteal, there was no way they could let him have his way. Yi Shu, Tang Ru, and Su Mucheng rushed forward after the bats transformed back into the Vampire Knight. They continue to surround and attack him, while Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon continue to watch as spectators. After a few cycles, the Vampire Knight's life finally dropped to 10%. However, no one was worried about his red blood status. This was because when the Vampire Knight turned enraged after dropping to red blood, it would set new fodder without replacing the old fodder. In theory, this meant that all 5 players could become fodder, which meant that no matter who fought it, they would have their life stolen. But with Yi Shu's and Su Mucheng's level of skill, the Vampire Knight's bat transformation was already an empty threat. They didn't need to care about such a change. The Red Blood Vampire Knight screeched as he struggled until finally, he died under the 3 players' attacks. After falling to the ground, all of the items that could be dropped had already all dropped. Yi Shu looked over them. He didn't see that scarlet vampiric lightsaber, but wasn't too disappointed. This was an orange equipment, a type of equipment that heavily depended on your luck. If you didn't have the right mindset towards it, then it would be easy for you to curse your luck and cause you to lose all hope in yourself. Wow! 2 purple eggs, Su Mucheng cried out in astonishment. Yi Shu stared blankly. 2 purple eggs was a saying in glory. It meant that 2 purple equipment dropped when the monster died. To raise 1 and infer 3, 2 blue eggs, 3 purple eggs, 4 orange eggs could all be said as long as you actually encountered such a situation. The probability of 2 purple eggs obviously wasn't high. However, of the equipment that the Vampire Knight dropped, the only item Yi Shu wanted was the vampiric lightsaber. As for rest, even if 8 purple eggs came out, he still wouldn't care. It's the shield and cloak. Seven Fields looked over them and said. After changing classes, the shield could only be used by a knight. Shields had 2 main attributes. The first was increased defense and the second was damage absorption. They were both important in increasing the knight's survivability. The shield dropped from the Vampire Knight was his vampiric shield. It increased defense by 20% and had 12% damage absorption. Besides this, it also had an additional effect: all damage done would have 2% life return. Not bad, Yi Shu praised, then give it to whoever can use it. Yi Shu was talking about Seven Fields' friends. Drifting Water was a knight, while Sunset Clouds was a blade master. Except Yi Shu already forgot which one was the knight and could only say, whoever it was. There's also the Vampire Cloak. Vitality plus 1-5, Strength plus 1-5, 2% lifesteal for melee attacks, Seven Fields said. Lifesteal, and that shield's life return, were antonyms. Lifesteal was damage done to the target would change into the user's health. Life return meant that when the user was attacked, the damage done to the user would change into the user's health. The cloak was an accessory-type equipment. Usually, they had this type of additional base stats and an additional effect. The current 5 players were all physical damage type classes, so everyone could use the cloak. However, Seven Fields didn't really do anything in the battle against the Vampire Knight. How could he shamelessly ask for it? So he directly renounced it. As for Sleeping Moon, after becoming fodder, he let the 3 experts attack the boss with ease, so his impact in the battle wasn't small. However, this contribution was quite shameful to be considered as one, so he also renounced it. Su Mucheng's cleansing mist was long-ranged, so that 2% lifesteal for melee attacks was completely wasted on her, so she also renounced it. In the end, only Yi Shu and Tang Ru remained. How could Yi Shu care about these low-level equipment? He also renounced it. Up until finally, Tang Ru was extremely puzzled. Why did everyone renounce it? I'm long-ranged, Su Mucheng was the most justified. Cough cough, Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon didn't utter a word. If no one wanted it, it wasn't as if they weren't going to roll for it. You use it, Yi Shu said. Can't you guys all use it too? Although Tang Ru was a noob, she knew that physical classes needed strength, while magic classes needed intelligence. How could she not have understood this sort of basic knowledge by now? This cloak could clearly be used by everyone, but they all renounced it. The strong-headed Tang Ru didn't want to take it so conveniently. Roll for it, Tang Ru said. Okay, roll. Everyone come and roll. Whoever rolls for it gets it. It was just a small matter. Yi Shu didn't want to get caught up with it. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon still wanted to decline, but Yi Shu's hands were quicker. They had previously renounced it, so they no longer had the button for rolling. As a result, they had to give the command for rolling in the chat box. In the end, Yi Shu rolled a beautiful 100 and completely decimated his opponents. Oh. Then it's yours. Tang Ru had also renounced it before, so the cloak was just lying on the ground. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon's cheeks streamed with tears. They had wanted to decline it. And if everyone insisted, then they would reluctantly roll for it. But he deserved to be called brother expert. Everything he did was extraordinary. He never gave others a chance. Then it's mine. Yi Shu said this and had Lord Grimm pick up the cloak. Although it was a low-leveled equipment, even if he didn't care, it's not like he wouldn't turn his back on it. After picking it up, he put it on at once. This vampire's clothing and the cloak were pretty much the same. From the back, Lord Grimm looked exactly the same as the vampire knight. Yi Shu opened his character profile and casually looked at his model. He didn't care too much. In so many years, what dress-up hadn't he been in? Continue, continue, Yi Shu yelled. The party continued forward. Because of the hidden boss, setting a record this run had already become like floating clouds. Everyone had run this dungeon before, so no one was a stranger to it. They casually rolled through it. Without resting, they continued on for their second run. This time, no hidden boss appeared, so everyone immediately moved forward with a record-setting mindset. Yi Shu instructed them, seeking after zero mistakes and good coordination. However, Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon's skill and equipment were all a degree lower. There were always times when the situation was beyond their ability. The current record was set with great effort by level 27s. Breaking it meant that they couldn't afford to be sloppy. In the two following runs, Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon each nervously made their own large and small mistakes. In the end, the difference between their time and the record was only off by a hair. This was too much of a hit to them. The two all knew that if they had made a fewer mistakes, then they would have broken the record long ago. Sigh, brother expert. It seems like us two aren't good enough. Do you want to switch players to set it? Seven Fields said in embarrassment. Boneyard could be run 4 times every day. Right now, the 5 players could still run it one more time. On the side, Sleeping Moon was unwilling to accept it. But no choice, it was a fact that he and Seven Fields weren't able to keep up. But if the party lowered their tempo to let them relax a bit, then they wouldn't be able to set a new record. Switch players? Weren't you the one that wanted to set a record? Yi Shu asked Seven Fields. Seven Fields' cheeks streamed with tears. Only then did he recall, in the beginning, when he asked whether or not they could set a new record. In the end, he was the one who gave up and made himself look like he had no resolve. Even Sleeping Moon chose the opportunity to look down on him. Yeah, Seven Fields, you really have no future. F***CK, Seven Fields cursed, we'll definitely have it this time. The two players summoned up their spirits and entered the dungeon their final run. Focused and concentrating with all of their might, adding on to their previous experiences, their performance was finally smooth the entire way through. The two were extremely happy with themselves. In the blink of an eye, they reached the final boss. Here, the two players' tasks were easy. It was the part where making mistakes was harder than not making mistakes. Finally, the boss fell and a system announcement popped up. Congratulations to players, Lord Grimm, Seven Fields, Sleeping Moon, Soft Mist, Cleansing Mist, for breaking the Boneyard Clear record, time, 23:54:71. This record wasn't much better than the previous Tyrannical Ambitions record. But in the eyes of the two carried Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon. Being able to improve the record by a minute was already extremely good for their current party setup. Currently, in the competition between the big guilds, they were only improving the records by a few seconds. Breaking the Boneyard record wasn't anything rare, but having Lord Grimm's famous name appear was a completely different matter. The first reactions of each of the big guild's leaders was, which guild invited him to set a new record? Blue Brook Guild's Blue River and Tyrannical Ambitions Cold Knight even directly asked him. And in the end, Yi Shu gave them the reply, I was just leveling and casually dungeoning. The two guild leaders' cheeks streamed with tears. This casual dungeoning had broken their records. If this wasn't him showing his strength, then what was it? Outside of this, there was still Lu Hao. His hateful sword never went offline. What was he doing? He was in the arena playing with Steamed Bun Invasion. Lu Hao had wanted to whisper to him with hateful sword, but knowing that Steamed Bun was playing in the arena again, he was suddenly hit with a bright idea. He ran to the arena and fought with Steamed Bun Invasion. He wasn't able to get anything out of directly contacting Yi Chu, so wouldn't it be better to begin with the players close to him? Lu Hao felt that this wasn't a bad idea. Fighting with Steamed Bun Invasion was quite exhausting for Lu Hao. He had to hide his strength. But he also couldn't hide too much. As a result, he had to make every battle extremely close. Steamed Bun Invasion wasn't weak either. The battle wasn't easy to control, so it was very demanding for Lu Hao. While carefully fighting, he also had to use every possible means to get information out of Steamed Bun Invasion. If Steamed Bun Invasion knew anything, it wasn't as if he wouldn't say it. The problem was that he himself didn't know anything. He wasn't even familiar with the game glory itself, so his descriptions of his dungeoning weren't clear. He couldn't even name what skills the other players used. And in the end, he began describing how great his own strength was. Lu Hao was trying hard to decipher the information that was coming out from the noob's mouth. After quite a long time, he was still unable to understand anything. Suddenly, a system announcement popped up and that extremely sensitive name caught his eye. How? Lu Hao was astonished. Could it be that this Steamed Bun Invasion wasn't a member of Yi Chu's main force? Why wasn't he called over to set this record? Lu Hao went to look for Steamed Bun Invasion to play. A part of this reason, to get familiar with Steamed Bun Invasion and take the opportunity to become a member of the main force. Why didn't God call you over to set a record? Lu Hao asked Steamed Bun Invasion. Remember this well. In the arena, if you want to obtain victory, the first thing you have to do is concentrate. You're not focused enough, Steamed Bun Invasion lectured. F***ck, Lu Hao turned furious. Who does this guy think he is? How dare he lecture me? Chapter 114, Control over Records. That was the last straw for Lu Hao. This time, he didn't hold back and flattened Steamed Bun Invasion back into dough. You fought really well, Steamed Bun Invasion said. It looks like what I said aroused your spirit. Okay, then I won't say anything more. I'm out. Lu Hao directly let Hateful Sword leave the arena. If he continued playing, then he felt that he'd smash his newly replaced keyboard into pieces again. God, you set another record. Congratulations, Lu Hao sent Lord Grimm his felicitations. I was just casually dungeoning. Yi Chu's reply was the same as his reply to the guild leaders. To be able to break a record while casually dungeoning, that's too amazing, Lu Hao falsely flattered, while his mouth was actually cursing non-stop. It was just a fluke. It took a few times before we said it, Yi Chu said. Oh, then do you have a space now? Lu Hao asked. So sorry, Yi Chu said. Then I'll be going off first. Lu Hao grinded his teeth and left. See you later. For Yi Chu and the others, after breaking the record, there was a 100% chance of receiving a purple equipment as a reward. In the end, they were rewarded with a level 25 leather armor. Of the 5 players, only Soft Mist's battle mage was proficient with leather armor. 7 Fields, Sleeping Moon, and Cleansing Mist naturally chose to renounce it. Lord Grimm's unspecialized character class wasn't proficient in anything, but after expressing that the leather armor's defense was beneath him, this leather armor was given to Soft Mist to wear. With regards to armor, it was quite miserable for unspecialized characters. They weren't proficient in any, so they didn't get any additional effects. After splitting the equipment, the 5 players went to run Frost Forest for experience. On the way there, a message popped up in the World Channel claiming that Full Moon Guild was responsible for Boneyard's record. Full Moon Guild? That sounds a little familiar, Yi Chu mumbled to the 5 players. Never heard of them, Su Mucheng said. I don't understand, Tang Ru said. Our guild. 7 Fields and Sleeping Moon's faces were burning hot and were promptly roared at in their guild channel. The guild members hadn't given them any prior warning. After seeing their two names in the record-setting party, they inexplicably tried to get publicity. Full Moon Guild was just a normal guild. They weren't like Blue Brook Guild and the others with a club behind them. Their strength was far off from the big guild's strength by a large margin. To rely on their own strength to set a record was something that they had never even thought of. Whoa, in any case, it's your two names up there. All this yelling is just a joke to you two. Full Moon Guild's players all smiled mischievously at the two of them. Exactly. Speaking of this, it seems like you guys are close to Lord Grimm? When are you going to let him help our guild set a record? Let us be in the spotlight too. Everyone in the guild channel was jeering. Jealousy. This was plain jealousy. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon angrily thought. These guys saw that they had mixed in with Brother Expert quite a few times and appeared on TV. They had appeared on so many leaderboards, and now that they had mingled onto one again, their jealousy exploded out, so they deliberately mocked them. This sort of behavior was quite petty. The two didn't know how to explain it to Brother Expert. The guild wouldn't listen to anything they said. These guys were still incessantly typing in the world channel that the record was set by them. Yishu also quickly received messages secretly from the guild leaders. Full Moon Guild was so insignificant that Blue River and Cold Night had never even heard of them. They just asked what the situation was. Yishu was helpless. He could only say it was just friends joking around. The two guild leaders heaved a sigh of relief. Because the subject happened to be on this, Cold Night took advantage to conveniently ask Yishu whether he would be hired by two guilds simultaneously and then break his own record. That isn't good, Yishu replied. For the records I set, I can't guarantee that others won't be able to beat it. But I definitely won't break my own again. Then this current record doesn't count, right? Cold Night said. Of course this doesn't count, Yishu replied. How much better can the record be? Cold Night asked. This. With a better party setup. 3 minutes, Yishu said. 3 minutes. Cold Night sucked in a cold breath. If the current record was improved by 3 minutes, then it would break the fastest record in all 10 servers. This was clearly another height that normal players had no way of reaching. If it was this type of achievement, then as no one invited similar level experts to substitute in, then it was practically unbeatable. Then, what if we waited until you were level 27? Cold Night asked. The difference between setting it at level 27 and level 25 isn't actually too big. Of course, there is still a small difference. I should be able to set it within the 20-minute mark, Yishu replied. Oh, then currently, how many guilds are you in contact with? Cold Night asked a relatively sensitive subject. Not many, Yishu looked at his chat box. Besides Cold Night, there was only Blue Brook Guild's Blue River. The other big guilds hadn't contacted him, which was clearly because the current competition for the records was both chaotic and high-end. Each of the big guilds were all already in a wait-and-see state. This type of situation wasn't one that Yishu wanted to see. He clearly knew where the problem was. He had lost control over the fastest record. In the competition for Frost Forest's record, from a short-term perspective, he took control 2 times, one after another. But the final record still fell into Excellent Dynasty's hands. On the surface, Yishu looked as if he was indifferent. But in his heart, he clearly understood what a heavy blow this was to him. It was all because of the existence of this that all of those guilds sunk into a wait-and-see state. Because of this, Lord Grimm was no longer a guarantee for the fastest dungeon record. Even if his record was far higher than the normal record, there were outside players that could still break his record in the 10th server. If the situation stayed the same, then obviously no one would look for him to break the record. Currently, Blue Brook Guild and Tyrannical Ambitions players still looked for him all because these two guilds had cooperated with him before and had personally seen his skill. This was why they still held confidence in him. But Yishu was afraid that Frost Forest's record had already sown a seed of doubt into these two's hearts. The following competition for Boneyard became another test for him. If this time, he broke the record, but was still unable to hold the spot for fastest record. Then even though he could still obtain the rewards, in the next dungeon, he was afraid that even these two guilds wouldn't look for him. If he could improve the Frost Forest's record again, then it would be a powerful counter-attack. However, the current record made Yi Shu feel a bit helpless. Just like what he once said, this was only a low-level dungeon. No matter if it was him or Lu Hao's party, their skill was way above the dungeon. Thus, against this dungeon, tactics, skill and so on couldn't make too much of a difference. As a result, once Lu Hao went all out, the record set by his more optimal party made Yi Shu feel somewhat helpless. Moreover, he didn't have too many players he could choose from to create the most optimal party. On the other hand, Excellent Dynasty could provide the necessary accounts for the required party setup. As a pro player, besides their most proficient class, they also had some understanding of all the other classes. If they switched classes, even if they couldn't display the greatest strength, it was still a low-level dungeon and nothing more. Pro players simply didn't need their complete strength. Yi Shu was thinking while running the Frost Forest dungeon with the other 4 players. In the process, he was not only fighting monsters, but he was also carefully observing the dungeon. He wanted to see if there was any sort of way to break through the record. In the end, after clearing the dungeon 4 times, he hadn't come up with anything. After finishing the dungeon runs, Su Mucheng was the first to log out. Tang Ru and the others were prepared to continue power leveling. Yi Shu didn't follow them and logged out of the game. "Why'd you stop playing?" Tang Ru got up and moved around. She went for a walk and went to greet Yi Shu. "Oh, I'm going to do some research for the next dungeon," Yi Shu said. The next dungeon? Boneyard. Yi Shu was currently gathering a large amount of information. What about Frost Forest? Tang Ru cared quite a bit about the fact that their Frost Forest record had been broken. "That, unless we had better equipment, it'll be very hard to break it," Yi Shu said. Just before, when he ran the 4 dungeons, he was completely stumped. However, Yi Shu still had some hope for Boneyard. Tang Ru was silent. Although she wasn't willing to accept it, she knew that she didn't really have the right to speak. Her ability to judge was still far off from Yi Shu's by a large margin. "What's wrong with fighting Boneyard in the same way we do now?" Tang Ru tried hard to learn. "There isn't a problem. However, our goal is to set a record that no one else will be able to break," Yi Shu said. Yeah, that's good." Tang Ru liked this type of goal. Tang Ru went back to continue playing, while Yi Shu continued to look for info. There's got to be a newer strategy. Yi Shu looked at the info and felt his heart shake. He hadn't discovered anything surprising from all the info. Rather, he discovered that all of the info was quite old-fashioned. Clearly, this was because this was a low-level dungeon. As a result, besides the players who researched it in the beginning stages of the game, all of the later players followed the guides that were previously written. There would occasionally be a few changes in the particulars, but the general strategy never changed. After all, for this type of low-end dungeon, in the stage of the game where players would flash by it, there simply wasn't much value in conducting further research. Looking at the info, checking the data, racking his brains, and recalling these past few days of running the dungeon, a new strategy gradually formed in Yi Shu's mind. "Good, tomorrow we'll try it." Yi Shu straightened out his line of thinking again. He even wrote down a few of the important points and then nodded his head. Soon after, he logged into the game. Tang Ru immediately sent a message, "How is it?" "I've got a general idea. We'll try it tomorrow." "Okay." The 2 players each minded their own business and leveled, without a word the whole night. In Club Excellent Era, the next day, Lu Hao got a call from Chen Yahui early in the morning. "Lu, Yi Chu set the record for Boneyard," Chen Yahui said. "I know. I was there yesterday night," Lu Hao replied. "Oh, I had something to do last night, so I wasn't there. I just found out. But it looks like the record this time isn't anything amazing," Chen Yahui said. "Yeah, he definitely wasn't using everything he had, so there's no need to come out yet," Lu Hao said. Right, I have info from Tyrannical Ambition and Blue Brook Guild. Yi Chu received pay from them when he helped them set a record. Received pay? Ha ha ha, so he was originally selling himself. God, Yi must be hard-pressed for money. How much money for one dungeon? Perhaps I'll buy him to do our labor. Lu Hao was extremely happy. Oh, he's not taking money. He wanted several specific uncommon material, Chen Yahui said. He wants uncommon material. Lu Hao suddenly thought of something. Chapter 115, Going All Out. Uncommon materials, self-made equipment. Lu Hao quickly thought of these two things and then immediately understood Yi Shu's purpose. He suddenly laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha, so this is his plan. On the other line, Chen Yahui almost threw out his phone in surprise. After steadying himself, he carefully asked, "What do you mean?" It's too bad. He's already been completely seen through by me. With his current state, how does he plan on fighting me? Is he going to start over and try again? Dream on. Lu Hao was already talking to himself. Chen Yahui heard this while saying helplessly, "Lu, if there's nothing else to attend to, then I'm going to hang up." Okay, go back and prepare accounts to use for Boneyard. I need a spellblade, sharpshooter, striker, blade master, and a witch, Lu Hao ordered. Okay, Chen Yahui replied. Hearing these 5 classes, he was secretly startled. For the previous record, Lu Hao had only picked 3 classes. This time, he had picked 5 classes. Could it be that he was going to bring out 5 pro players to set the record for Boneyard? What exactly has he discovered? He was actually starting to put even more energy on this dungeon. In Happy Internet Cafe, Yi Shu and Tang Ru continued to level and weren't doing anything out of the ordinary. Chen Guo had already become numb to it. That morning, after waking up, Yi Shu unexpectedly went over to look for her. Boss, lend me your account for me to play with. Yi Shu had come over to borrow her account card. What are you planning on doing? Chen Guo asked. Clearing a low-level dungeon, Yi Shu said. Clearing a low-level dungeon? Chen Guo stared blankly. She handed over her Chasing Haze while following along to see what he was planning on doing. Chasing Haze was an account that had already entered the heavenly domain. But that didn't mean she couldn't leave the heavenly domain. After Yi Shu had Chasing Haze leave the heavenly domain, he immediately rushed over to the low-level dungeon Boneyard. The Boneyard in the old server naturally wasn't as lively as the 10th server's Boneyard, but there were still a few players there. Seeing a level 70 character appear, players immediately filled the screen with messages of, "Sister, please carry me." Quite a few parties had already sent out party invites. This was the benefit of playing in an old server. When comparing leveling speed, leveling in the old server was absolutely faster than leveling in the new server. Even if you didn't know any friends, there were quite a few high-leveled accounts that specially came to sell their services to carry low-leveled accounts. Yi Shu obviously ignored these players. He immediately had Chasing Haze enter the dungeon. A level 70 account wouldn't have any problems clearing this low-level dungeon, not to mention that Yi Shu was the one controlling it. But after entering the dungeon, Yi Shu wasn't in a hurry to fight. He had Chasing Haze run this way and that until eventually, a mob of monsters followed behind her butt. It looked as if he were flirting with these monsters. What are you doing? Chen Guo didn't understand. Oh, I'm just looking at this dungeon. My account doesn't have any entries left, Yi Shu explained, while playing. Chasing Haze unleashed a few skills and the mob of monsters were wiped clean. Following after, Yi Shu fished out a notebook from his pocket. Chen Guo was familiar with this notebook. If you took a left turn after leaving the internet cafe, there was a shop that sold these for 3 RMB each. Once the notebook was flipped open, Chen Guo looked at it and saw that there were already a few notes messily written in the first few pages. On them, there were even a few indistinguishable things drawn on. Yi Shu flipped to the last page and then immediately began scribbling. You're taking notes? Chen Guo felt refreshed. I'm researching it in preparation for setting a new dungeon record, Yi Shu said. Chen Guo stared blankly and didn't know what to say. Yi Shu's concentration and seriousness made her feel moved. She also liked Glory. She was also a considerably loyal fan. But for Yi Shu, she could tell that he had a completely different attitude towards the game. She was playing the game, but for Yi Shu, Chen Guo suddenly felt that the word playing couldn't be used to describe him. Chen Guo couldn't help but think of 9 years ago when she took the internet cafe under her care. She was completely surrounded by gazes that doubted her, though it was true that she knew nothing. From that day onwards, she soaked in the internet cafe and little by little paid attention to her customers' needs. She continuously improved the internet cafe's environment and tried out all sorts of methods to draw in more customers. Every night, she calculated that day's customer flow and looked for patterns. The her at that time was similar to the current Yi Shu, concentrated, serious, and spared no efforts. It was extremely exhausting, but when she saw how her internet cafe was doing better and better every day, she felt that much more satisfied. The current internet cafe had a steady customer flow and the income that came in far exceeded the income at that time. But how long had it been since she had felt that sort of satisfaction? Chen Guo was somewhat envious of Yi Shu. But besides envy, there was also some sympathy. To put so much effort into the game, yet to be kicked out of the pro scene, how sad. Chen Guo suddenly felt her heart ache. She couldn't help but think of the recently retired Yi Chu. At the time of his retirement, the person suffering the most had to be the person himself, no? It truly was a cruel word. The pen tip scribbled across the notebook. Yi Shu didn't notice the change in Chen Guo behind him. Chen Guo didn't disturb him any further and silently walked away in grief. Yi Shu continued to use Chasing Haze to explore Boneyard. A high-leveled account brought along with it a lot of conveniences that low-leveled accounts didn't have. The notes written on the notebook increased more and more. Unwittingly, the run had been completed. Yi Shu didn't stop. He had Chasing Haze enter the dungeon again. Except this time, he spent more time playing and less time taking notes. After 3 runs, Chasing Haze's entries had all been used up. Yi Shu harvested quite a bit from this. He logged out of the game in satisfaction and returned the account card to Chen Guo. "How was it?" Chen Guo asked. "Pretty good," Yi Shu smiled. "Okay, you can do it," Chen Guo said. "What?" Yi Shu didn't hear her clearly. "You can do it," Chen Guo repeated. "I didn't hear wrong, did I?" Yi Shu widened his eyes. He had put so much effort in the low-level dungeon. Wasn't she supposed to look down on him? She was cheering him on right now. Moreover, her tone seemed a little gentle. Thinking of this word, Yi Shu couldn't help but shiver. This word seemed a little wrong to describe Chen Guo. "Get lost, go to sleep," Chen Guo was furious. This guy truly didn't know good from bad. Yi Shu immediately relaxed. This was the Chen Guo he was used to. He wasn't talking to the wrong person. Nothing exciting happened during the day. At night, when Chen Guo was getting ready to go to bed, Yi Shu and Tang Ru turned on their computers in glowing spirits and began their day. In-game, after Yi Shu went online, he whispered to Steamed Bun Invasion and told him to come to dungeon with him at midnight. In the end, Steamed Bun Invasion recommended him that Hateful Sword. He said that after fighting him in the arena for the past 2 days, that Hateful Sword's skill improved by a lot. "Really? Then when the time comes, bring him with you." Yi Shu laughed and then ignored the rest of Steamed Bun Invasion's boasting. In any case, besides the 4 main players in their party, there was still an empty position. It didn't matter who came. "Okay, come along with us tonight to dungeon," Steamed Bun Invasion told Hateful Sword, who was in the arena with him. "Really? That's great." Lu Hao really was happy. Except even though he was happy on the outside, he was dark on the inside. "Let me tell you this. When you meet God, you have to be polite. If he can instruct you on anything, it'll be the gift of a lifetime," Steamed Bun Invasion said heartfeltly. *CK his instructions. Lu Hao cursed inwardly. Fortunately, after being with Steamed Bun Invasion for 2 days, his tolerance towards the noobs babbling nonsense had clearly improved. In the end, he still embodied his pro-level inner qualities and adaptability. Although he was furiously cursing in his heart, he was smiling on the outside, of course. At midnight 0:00, the party gathered. Steamed Bun Invasion and Hateful Sword arrived from the arena at the same time. Yi Shu and Tang Ru were already together and they casually greeted him. Su Mucheng's cleansing mist was the last to arrive and also greeted the newcomer. "Is she Su Mucheng?" Lu Hao guessed. She had only said a short greeting, so he wasn't able to tell. However, but whether or not she was Su Mucheng wasn't Lu Hao's main focus. He stayed low and cautious and followed the party into the dungeon. This time, we're going to be practicing the strategy for setting Boneyard's record. It's currently still in the testing stage, so there might be a few overlooked places. Everyone, be careful, Yi Shu said after entering the dungeon. Did you hear what he was saying? I'm talking to you, Steam Bun Invasion said. Who? Lu Hao answered. They were all characters in the game, so there wasn't any contact between them. There was no way to tell who Steam Bun Invasion was talking to. Noobs were noobs. You. Besides you, we've all been teammates before, Steam Bun Invasion said. Lu Hao slapped himself. He only had himself to blame. Why'd he have to be partners with this rotten steamed bun? Huh? What was that sound? I thought I heard a slap sound. Did you hear that? Steamed Bun Invasion yelled. Lu Hao started sweating. He really couldn't be careless. They had even heard that. I heard it. Let's begin. Yi Shu didn't use any skill to change topics. Steamed Bun Invasion didn't move or speak. No one knew whether or not this guy was trying to listen for a second slap. The most important point in setting the Boneyard record is your pathing. By using good pathing, you use the most ideal movements to alarm the least amount of monsters underneath the ground. Our strategy will be using this line of thinking. Everyone pay attention. Do your best to make sure that you don't make a single wrong step. Hateful sword, come back first, Yi Shu said. Ah? Lu Hao stared blankly. What ah? We just started and you've already began randomly running around. We won't be bringing you, Steamed Bun Invasion solemnly criticized Hateful Sword. What's wrong? Lu Hao still didn't understand. It looks like you know the strategy, Yi Shu said. If they weren't rushing for the record, there was no need to save time. If they had more monsters to fight, then there would even be a bit more experience for them. That's why Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion had no clue on the strategy for record setting. I know it. In the beginning, I thought that there wasn't much to pay attention to, Lu Hao said. Haha, we're going to be using a new strategy, Yi Shu said. Did you not hear it? New strategy. It's not that outdated strategy you know of, Steamed Bun Invasion said. New strategy? Lu Hao was in a daze. Right, everyone pay attention to how I move. I'll talk while I move, Yi Shu said. He had already let his Lord Grim rush forward. In the blink of an eye, the earth that met his body opened up and 4 undead monsters began climbing up. What's different about this strategy? Lu Hao was at a loss. The 4 monsters in the beginning couldn't be avoided, which was why they would swarm around them and kill them off. Right now, what was so special about Lord Grim's pathing? Didn't it also alarm 4 monsters?